On a cold October morning, a billionaire left $250,000 in cash, diamonds, gold, and expensive jewelry scattered on his bed to test his black maid. She'd been building her reputation for 12 years, working 2 jobs to support her dying grandmother and finish college. But suddenly, she walked into his bedroom and found valuables worth over $410,000 scattered like breadcrumbs across his bed. Even though she knew one wrong move could destroy everything she'd built, she still made a choice that would leave him stunned. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. And trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let me take you back to where this story really began. Earlier that morning, when a billionaire decided to play with a woman's character. The 42 floors of the Aqua Tower stretched toward Lake Michigan's gray October sky. But for Harrison Blackthorne, the view from his corner unit felt more like a prison than a privilege. At 58, the tech mogul had built an empire worth $12 billion. Yet, he sat alone at his marble breakfast counter, scrolling through news of another data breach at a competitor's company while his coffee grew cold. Harrison's steel gray hair was perfectly styled, his navy cashmere sweater and pressed khakis speaking to wealth that never needed to announce itself. But his blue eyes held a weariness that money couldn't cure. The October morning light streaming through his expansive windows illuminated a space that belonged in Architectural Digest, leather furniture and rich browns, abstract paintings worth more than most people's houses, and technology so advanced it responded to his voice before he finished speaking. "Good morning." Mr. Blackthorne came the gentle voice from his smart home system. "You have 3 board meetings today, lunch with the Tribune's tech reporter, and your evening charity gala." "Cancel." "Lunch?" Harrison muttered, not looking up from his tablet, where headlines screamed about corporate espionage and employee theft. The story hit too close to home. 6 months ago, his most trusted financial advisor had embezzled $2 million before disappearing to the Cayman Islands. 3 years before that, his head of security had sold company secrets to competitors. Trust no one. The motto had served him well in business, but it had also left him utterly alone. The elevator chimed, softly, signaling the arrival of his domestic staff. Harrison glanced at his Rolex. 7:30 a.m. precisely on time. He'd hired Celestial Domestic Services 8 months ago after firing the previous company for what he suspected was theft, though he could never prove it. The new service was different. They ran background checks, had insurance, came highly recommended by other wealthy families in Chicago. But still, he wondered, always wondering, what would you do? He thought, staring at the city below. If I gave you the chance to take everything. The plan had been forming for weeks. Hidden in his bedroom safe were stacks of $100 bills totaling exactly $250,000, along with diamond earrings worth $50,000, a gold Rolex collection valued at $75,000, and his late mother's emerald necklace appraised at $35,000, over $410,000, in easily portable wealth. Today, he would scatter it all across his bed and see what happened when temptation met opportunity. 23 miles south, Kesha Washington's alarm had been ringing for exactly 1 minute before she silenced it with a swift tap. 5:15 a.m. came early, but she'd been waking at this hour for 12 years. Ever since, she'd started working 2 jobs to support her grandmother and put herself through community college. At 34, Kesha moved with the efficient grace of someone who'd learned to make every motion count. Her dark skin glowed with the kind of health that came from walking everywhere and eating home-cooked meals. And her natural hair was pulled back in a practical bun that would survive a full day of cleaning. She chose her outfit carefully each morning. Today, dark jeans that wouldn't show dust, a bright turquoise blouse that made her feel confident, and comfortable sneakers that would carry her through 8 hours on her feet. Her studio apartment in Bronzeville was small but immaculate, every surface scrubbed clean, every object in its designated place. Family photos covered one wall. Her late parents at their wedding. Her grandmother receiving her nursing degree at 65. Kesha's younger brother Jerome in his army uniform. A small kitchen table. Doubled as her desk, where accounting textbooks sat stacked beside a calculator and notebooks filled with her careful handwriting. 2 more semesters, she reminded herself as she made coffee. In the tiny kitchen. 2 more semesters, and you'll have your degree. The previous evening's conversation with her grandmother echoed in her mind. At 82, Nana was still sharp as a tack, but her medications were getting more expensive each month, and her fixed income only stretched so far. Baby girl, Nana had said, her weathered hands folding Kesha's laundry with practiced precision. I don't want you working yourself to death for an old woman. You're not old, Nana. You're vintage, Kesha had replied. The same joke she'd been making for years, but privately she worried. The part-time bookkeeping job paid well, but it wasn't enough. The cleaning service covered rent and groceries, but barely, and her dream of becoming a certified public accountant felt simultaneously within reach and impossibly far away. She checked her phone, a text from her supervisor at Celestial Domestic Services. Blackthorn residence today. Premium rate. Be extra careful. He's particular. Kesha had cleaned for wealthy families before, but the Blackthorn job was different. The client paid triple normal rate, had more security cameras than a bank, and never spoke to staff directly. She'd been there 6 times over the past 2 months, and each visit felt like walking through a museum where she was afraid to breathe too loudly. As she gathered her cleaning supplies and packed her lunch, a turkey sandwich and an apple that would have to last until dinner, Kesha caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Her mother's eyes looked back at her, warm brown and determined. You raised me. Right, Mama, she whispered to the reflection. I won't let you down. The Elra's morning rush was just beginning as Kesha made her way to the Red Line, her supply bag slung over her shoulder, and her mind already organized in the day ahead. She didn't know that 42 floors above Lake Michigan, Harrison, Blackthorn was planning a test that would change both their lives forever. She didn't know that in 3 hours she would be standing in his bedroom faced with over $410,000 in cash and jewelry, scattered like fallen stars across Egyptian cotton sheets. And she certainly didn't know that her response would shatter every assumption Harrison had built his lonely world upon. Harrison's hands trembled slightly as he arranged the final piece, his mother's emerald necklace, the one she'd worn to every charity gala until cancer took her 5 years ago. He placed it carefully among the scattered $100 bills, letting the morning sunlight catch the brilliant green stones. The scene across his king-size bed looked like a pirate's treasure had exploded. $250,000 in crisp bills formed small mountains between diamond earrings that threw rainbows across the white. All away, all his worst suspicions were about to be confirmed. He turned up the audio feed, straining to hear her voice over the apartment's air circulation system. Hello, is this the Chicago Police Department? I need to report what might be a burglary or something suspicious at my workplace. Harrison's hand froze over his phone. His heart stopped beating for what felt like a full minute. She was calling the police. On him. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tested your character without your knowledge? How did it make you feel? Drop your thoughts below and hit that subscribe button for more stories that will make you believe in the power of integrity. Harrison stared at his laptop screen in complete disbelief as Kesha's voice continued through the audio feed. Yes, I'm at 340 East Randolph Street, the Aqua Tower unit. 4201. I'm a domestic worker with Celestial Cleaning Services, and I've discovered what appears to be hundreds of thousands of dollars scattered across my employer's bed. It looks like maybe a robbery or some kind of emergency situation. She's really doing this. Harrison's mind reeled. She's actually calling the police because she thinks I'm in danger. His hands flew across his phones. Keyboard. pulling up the building's security system. Within minutes, the police would be here. His doorman would send them up. They'd find him perfectly safe in his office while his domestic worker stood in his bedroom reporting what she believed was a crime scene. The humiliation would be complete and public. But watching Kesha pace his bedroom while staying carefully away from the scattered money, Harrison felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Shame. Real bone-deep shame that made his chest tighten and his face burn. "No, sir. I haven't touched anything," Kesha was saying into her phone. "I know better than that. I'm staying right by the door until you arrive." She ended the call, and Harrison watched her lean against his bedroom, while her eyes closed, her chest rising and falling with deep breaths. When she opened her eyes again, they were bright with unshed tears. "I know you're watching," she said quietly to the room. "I don't know why you did this, Mr. Blackthorne. I don't know what I did to make you think so little of me, but I hope you're getting a good show." The words hit Harrison like physical blows. She knew she'd figured out the test, and instead of taking the money or simply walking away, she called the authorities because she genuinely believed he might be in danger. He buried his face in his hands. "What have I done?" Kesha pressed her back against the cool wall and fought to control her breathing. The hurt was worse than the anger now, a deep, aching disappointment that threatened to spill over in tears she refused to shed on camera. She'd been so careful, so professional. She'd even gone beyond her duties, organizing his medicine cabinet when she noticed his blood pressure medication was mixed in with vitamins, watering the plants that were clearly dying from neglect, leaving his favorite coffee pods in perfect rows because she'd noticed he always reached for the same brand. She started to care about this lonely, wealthy man she'd never met, creating small kindnesses in his space because the apartment felt so desperately empty despite all its luxury, and he'd repay that care by treating her like a common thief. "Just breathe," she told herself. "The police will come. They'll realize what happened, and you can walk out of here with your dignity intact." But even as she thought it, fear crept in around the edges. What if the police didn't believe her? What if Mr. Blackthorne claimed she'd stolen something? What if this was all an elaborate setup to frame her for theft? Her phone buzzed. A text from her supervisor at Celestial Cleaning Services. "Police called about incident at Blackthorne residence. Are you okay?" Word was already spreading. Soon it would be all over the cleaning services network. Kesha Washington, the girl who'd been working her way through college for 12 years, finally snapped and tried to rob a client. Because who would believe the truth? Who would believe that a billionaire had scattered over $400,000 across his bed just to test whether his black cleaning lady was a thief? The sound of the elevator chiming made her jump. Heavy footsteps in the hallway, getting closer. Chicago Police Department. "In here," Kesha called, her voice steadier than she felt. The bedroom. 2 officers appeared in the doorway. A middle-aged white man with kind eyes and a younger black woman who took in the scene with a sharp assessment of someone who'd seen everything. "Ma'am, are you the one who called this in?" the male officer asked. "Yes, sir." "Officer." Kesha read his nameplate. "Officer Robinson. I'm Kesha Washington with Celestial Cleaning Services. I arrived for my scheduled appointment at 7:30 this morning and discovered this when I came to clean the bedroom around 10:30. The female officer whistled low under her breath as she surveyed the scattered wealth. "That's a lot of cash. Any sign of forced entry?" "No, ma'am." Officer Kesha checked the second nameplate. "Officer Chin, the apartment was locked when I arrived. I used my key card like always. Nothing else seems disturbed." Officer Robinson was already on his radio. "We're going to need to locate the resident and make sure he's safe." "Ma'am, you said you work here regularly, twice a week for the past 2 months. I've never seen anything like this before. Where's your employer now?" Before Kesha could answer, a voice came from the doorway. "I'm right here." Harrison stood in his bedroom doorway, feeling like the worst kind of fool. He'd thrown on a dress shirt over his casual clothes, trying to look like he'd just returned from an early meeting. But the officer's sharp eyes took in every detail. His lack of coat, his house slippers, the fact that he was clearly already home when the call came in. Mr. Blackthorne, Officer Dukes stepped forward. "Are you all right, sir? We received a report of a possible burglary." Harrison's eyes met Kesha's across the room. She stood perfectly straight, her chin raised with quiet dignity, but he could see the hurt in her dark eyes, the betrayal, the disappointment that cut, deeper than any anger could have. "I'm fine," he said quietly. "There's been a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding." Officer Robinson gestured toward the bed. "Sir, there's over $4 million in cash scattered across your bedroom, plus what looks like significant jewelry. If this wasn't a burglary, can you explain what happened?" The moment stretched out like an eternity. Harrison could feel all three sets of eyes on him. The officers, waiting for an explanation. Kesha watching to see what lie he would tell. He could claim it was an accident. Say, he'd been organizing his valuables when an urgent phone call pulled him away. Make up some story about a business emergency that would explain the mess and make the whole thing disappear into paperwork and police reports that would be forgotten by evening. But looking at Kesha's face, seeing the careful mask she wore to hide her pain, Harrison realized he was tired of lies, tired of tests, tired of living in a world where trust was something you set traps to discover instead of something you offered freely. "Officers," he said, slowly, "I need to confess something. There was no burglary. I deliberately scattered these items across my bed." Officer Chen's eyebrows shot up. "Deliberately? Why would you do that?" Harrison's throat felt like sandpaper. "I was testing Ms. Washington. I wanted to see what she would do if she found valuable items left unattended." The silence that followed was deafening. Officer Robinson looked disgusted. Officer Dukes shook her head slowly. "And Kesha?" Kesha closed her eyes as if she'd been slapped. "Let me get this straight," Officer Robinson said, his voice carefully controlled. "You set up an elaborate test to see if your employee would steal from you, and when she discovered what she thought was evidence of crime, she immediately called police to report it and make sure you were safe." "Yes," Harrison whispered. "And you wasted police resources, city time, and traumatized your employee because you couldn't just trust her." Harrison had no answer for that. Officer Dukes turned to Kesha. "Ma'am, I'm very sorry this happened to you. You did exactly the right thing calling us." Kesha nodded but didn't speak. Harrison could see her hands trembling slightly. "Mr. Blackthorne," Officer Robinson continued, "while what you did isn't technically illegal, it's certainly unethical. You've wasted police time with a false report." "I didn't file the report," Harrison said quickly. "Ms. Washington did, because she was concerned for my safety, which makes this even worse." Officer Dukes interjected. "This woman was worried about you, tried to help you, and you were treating her like a suspect in your twisted little experiment." The officer's words hit like physical blows, but they were nothing compared to the look on Kesha's face when she finally opened her eyes. The hurt had transformed into something harder, more final. "Am I free to go?" she asked quietly. "Of course," Officer Robinson said gently again. "We're sorry you were put through this." Kesha nodded and walked toward the door, carefully stepping around the scattered money without looking at any of it. She paused beside Harrison, and for a moment he thought she might say something. Instead, she looked at him with an expression of profound disappointment that cut deeper than any words could have. Then she was gone, her footsteps echoing down the marble hallway until the elevator doors closed with a soft chime. Harrison stood surrounded by his scattered wealth and two disgusted police officers. Feeling poorer than he'd ever felt in his life, Harrison paced his apartment like a caged animal after the police left. The scattered money and jewelry still lay across his bed, a monument to his stupidity that he couldn't bring himself to clean up. Every time he looked at it, Kesha's face flashed in his mind. The moment she realized what he'd done, the careful dignity with which he'd walked away, the disappointment in her eyes, that had cut him deeper than any accusation. His phone had been ringing nonstop. First, the head of Celestial, cleaning services demanding an explanation for why police had been called to one of their client sites. Then his building manager asking about the police activity. Then his assistant, wondering why he'd missed his first board meeting of the day. Harrison ignored them all. He couldn't face explanations, couldn't stomach professional conversations that would smooth over what he'd done with corporate politeness and legal disclaimers. Instead, he found himself opening his laptop and scrolling through the camera footage from the morning, watching Kesha's reaction over and over again, the way she'd immediately thought of his safety, the genuine concern in her voice when she called 911, the careful way she'd stayed away from the money, afraid even to accidentally disturb what she thought might be evidence. She protected me, he realized, even thinking I might be hurt or in danger. Her first instinct was to protect me. When had anyone last done that for him? When had anyone looked past his wealth to simply see a human being who might need help? His intercom buzzed. Mr. Blackthorne came his doorman's voice. There's a young woman here to see you. Says she left something behind this morning. Harrison's heart jumped. Send her up. But when the elevator doors opened, it wasn't Kesha who stepped out. It was an elderly black woman with silver hair and kind eyes, wearing a purple coat that had seen better years, but was meticulously clean and pressed. She moved with the careful precision of someone whose joints act, but whose spirit remained strong. Mr. Blackthorne. Her voice carried the warm authority of someone accustomed to being listened to. I'm Dorothy Washington, Kesha's grandmother. Harrison's mouth went dry. Mrs. Washington. How did you get past your fancy security? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. When you've been a nurse for 45 years, you learn how to talk your way into places. That young man downstairs was very concerned when I told him my granddaughter had been upset by something that happened here today. She stepped into his apartment, her gaze taking in expensive furniture and artwork with the assessing eye of someone who'd cleaned similar spaces in her youth. May I sit down? These old bones don't stand as long as they used to. Of course, please. Harrison gestured toward his living room, his mind racing. Why was she here? What did she want? Dorothy settled onto his leather sofa with a soft sigh. Beautiful view, she commented, looking out at Lake Michigan. I can see why you want to stay up here away from all the messiness down below. The words stung, and Harrison suspected they were meant to Mrs. Washington about what happened today. Oh, I know exactly what happened today. Her voice remained calm, but still entered her tone. Kesha came home in tears. Told me the whole story. How? You scattered money around like breadcrumbs to see if the poor black girl would take some. Harrison flinched. It wasn't. I didn't think of it that way. How did you think of it? Dorothy's eyes pinned him in place. You've been watching my granddaughter work for 2 months. Has she ever given you reason to doubt her character? No, Harrison admitted quietly. Has she ever been anything but professional, respectful, and thorough in her work? No. Then why? Dorothy leaned forward, and Harrison could see where Kesha had gotten her inner strength. Why would you assume she was a thief? What about her made you think she couldn't be trusted? The question hung in the air like an accusation, but Harrison found himself answering honestly. Because everyone else has betrayed me. My financial advisor stole $2 million. My head of security sold my business secrets. My ex-wife married me for my money and left when she found someone richer. I thought if I could just know for certain that she was like all the rest. Dorothy's voice softened slightly. Mr. Blackthorne, let me tell you something about my granddaughter. When she was 16, she found a wallet on the bus with $300 in it. $300. When we were living on food stamps and her shoes had holes in the partner in my first company who sold our client list to competitors while I was visiting my dying mother. Each betrayal was a weight in his voice. Years of accumulated hurt that had calcified into suspicion. And before all of them, Harrison continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. There was my father. Kesha stopped packing. Entirely now, sensing they'd reached the heart of something important. Thomas Blackthorne was Chicago's most respected venture capitalist. Everyone wanted to be his friend, his business partner, his son-in-law. He taught me that people would always want something from me. The trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Harrison's hands were shaking slightly. When I was 12, he gave me $100 and told me to leave it on my desk at boarding school. Within a week, it was gone. My roommate, the boy I thought was my best friend, had taken it. Your father set you up, Kesha. Realized with horror, he made you bait your own friend. He called it a valuable lesson, said it was better to learn early that people would always disappoint you if the price was right. Harrison's smile was painful to watch. I've been testing people ever since. It's the only way I knew how to protect myself. The revelation hung between them, explaining so much about the lonely man who lived in this beautiful, empty apartment. But Kesha felt her own defenses rising. So you decided to teach me the same lesson your father taught you, she said, her voice hard. Pass on the poison to the next generation. No, Harrison said quickly. Yes, I don't. No, I was scared. Scared what? That I might steal your precious money. Scared that you might be different. The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it did her. For 2 months, I watched you work. I saw how you cared for my space, how you went beyond what anyone expected. You made my apartment feel like a home instead of a museum, and that terrified me. Kesha stared at him, because if I was genuine, you might have to trust someone again. And if I trusted you and you betrayed me like all the rest, Harrison shrugged. Helplessly, I thought it would break me completely. The raw honesty in his confession made Kesha's anger waver, but it also stirred something deeper, a recognition of pain that mirrored her own. You want to know about tests, Mr. Blackthorne? She said quietly. Let me tell you about the tests I face every single day. She leaned against her cleaning cart, suddenly looking exhausted. When I walk into a store, I'm tested. Will I steal something? When I apply for jobs, I'm tested. Am I articulate enough, professional enough, non-threatening enough? When I ride the elevator in buildings like this, I'm tested. Do I belong here or am I casing the place? Harrison winced, but she continued, when I was 15, I got a job at a grocery store. The manager made me empty my pockets at the end of every shift for the first month. Every shift, Mr. Blackthorne, because apparently being black and teenage automatically made me a suspect. Kesha, I'm not finished. Her voice was steady but fierce. When I started college, professors tested whether I belonged there or if I was just an affirmative action admission. When I got my bookkeeping clients, they tested whether I was smart enough to handle their finances or if they needed to watch me extra carefully. Each example was a small knife cutting away at Harrison's justifications. So, when I walked into your bedroom this morning and saw that money scattered everywhere, I knew exactly what it was. Another test. Another assumption that because of who I am and where I come from, I must be lacking in character. The pain in her voice was overwhelming. Harrison wanted to reach out to her, but the distance between them felt insurmountable. But here's the difference between us, Kesha continued. Every test I've faced has made me more determined to prove my worth. Your tests have made you afraid to see anyone's worth at all. The truth of it hit Harrison like a physical blow. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, Kesha said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. Sorry doesn't change the fact that you looked at me and saw a potential thief instead of a human being who was trying to care for you. No, it doesn't, Harrison agreed. But maybe it's a start. They were interrupted by Dorothy's voice from the living room. You two about finished back. There? These old ears are picking up some important conversation. Despite everything, Kesha almost smiled. Nana has selective hearing. She can't hear me when I tell her to take her blood pressure medication, but she can hear a whispered conversation from 3 rooms away. She came here for you, Harrison observed. Took on building security and a billionaire to protect her granddaughter. She's been protecting me my whole life. Kesha's voice softened with love. When my parents died in a car accident when I was 8, she took me in without question. Worked double shifts as a nurse to keep us afloat. Went back to school herself at 65 to get her degree because she said I needed to see that it was never too late to better yourself. She sounds remarkable. She is. She's the strongest person I know. Kesha paused. She's also dying. The words fell between them like stones. What? Pancreatic cancer. Diagnosed 3 months ago. Kesha's composure finally cracked, tears spilling over despite her efforts to contain them. The doctors say she has maybe 6 months if the treatments work, less if they don't. Harrison felt the world shift around him. Oh, Kesha, I'm so sorry. The treatments are experimental. Insurance won't cover them. That's why I work 2 jobs. Why I've been taking every extra shift I can get. I need $20,000 for the first round of treatments. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. $20,000 that might buy her a few more months to see me graduate. To see me become something more than just another girl from the South Side who cleans houses. The number hit Harrison like a sledgehammer. $20,000 less than he'd scattered across his bed as a test. Less than he spent on wine in a year. Less than his watch collection. Cost. An amount that was nothing to him, but everything to her. Kesha, don't. She held up a hand, reading his expression. Don't you dare offer me money now. Not after what happened today. I won't be your charity case. Your way of buying forgiveness. That's not. It is. Her voice was firm. You've already shown me what you think of my character. I won't give you the chance to think I was only nice to you because I wanted something. The irony was devastating. Harrison had tested her. Honesty with money she desperately needed for the most important thing in her life, and she'd pass without him, ever knowing the stakes. How long have you been carrying this? He asked quietly. Since the day I started working. For you. Kesha finished packing her supplies with sharp, efficient movements. Every morning I wake up knowing that time is running out. Every night I go to bed calculating how much I earned that day. How much closer I am to having enough. That's what you were testing, Mr. Blackthorne. Not whether I was honest, but whether I was desperate. Enough to throw away everything I believe in for money that could save the most important person in my world. The weight of what he'd done was crushing. Harrison had accidentally created the perfect test, not of greed, but of character under impossible pressure. And she'd passed so completely that she'd been willing to call the police on his behalf, even thinking he might be in danger. I would have given it all to you, he said quietly. The money, the jewelry, everything I'd known. But you didn't know. Kesha met his eyes. You never asked about my life, my struggles, what mattered to me. You only saw what you expected to see. She was right, and they both knew it. Dorothy's voice drifted from the living room again. Kesha, baby, we should get going. Your grandmother needs her medication, and you have that evening job tonight. I'm coming, Nana. Kesha grabbed the handle of her cleaning cart. Goodbye, Mr. Blackthorne. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. She started toward the door, but Harrison's voice stopped her. Wait, please. There's something else you need to know. Kesha paused but didn't turn around. The money on my bed. It wasn't just any money. Harrison's voice was barely audible. It was the exact amount my father used to test me when I was a child. $250,000. The amount he'd scatter around and tell me to count, to organize, to be responsible for. He said, if I could resist temptation with that much money, I could resist anything. Kesha turned, slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You've been carrying your father's test your whole life," she said, quietly, "and I pass it on to you. The poison, like you said." Harrison looked. "Broken. But you didn't take the poison, Kesha. You transformed it into something else entirely." Dorothy Washington had watched enough human drama in her 82 years to recognize a turning point when she saw one. From her position on Harrison's leather sofa, she could hear the shift in there. Voices, less anger, more understanding, and she knew her granddaughter was about to make one of her noble, self-sacrificing decisions if someone didn't intervene. "Kesha Marie Washington," she called out, using the full name that had commanded attention since childhood. "Bring that man out here and sit down." All this standing around, in hallways when there's perfectly good furniture going to waste. Kesha appeared in the doorway, her eyes still red from tears, but her spine straight with stubborn pride. "Nana, we should go. I've got to get to the bookkeeping office by 3. "You've got time." Dorothy patted the sofa beside her with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Sit." Harrison followed hesitantly, clearly unsure of his welcome in his own living room. Dorothy studied him with the sharp eyes of a woman who'd spent decades reading people in hospital rooms, seeing past what they showed to what they needed. "Mr. Blackthorne, you said your father taught you not to trust people. What did your mother teach you?" The question caught him off guard. "My mother. Every child has 2 parents, even if one overshadows the other." "What did she teach you?" Harrison sat heavily in the chair across from them, his expression distant with memory. "She taught me that everyone deserves kindness regardless of their station in life." She used to volunteer at soup kitchens, homeless shelters. She'd bring me along sometimes when I was young. And what happened to those lessons? They died with her when I was 26. His voice was quiet with old grief. "Cancer. My father said her soft heart was what killed her, that she gave too much of herself to people who didn't deserve it." Dorothy made a sound of disgust. "Your father was a fool." "Nana," Kesha warned softly. "Hush, child. I'm old enough to speak my mind." Dorothy turned back to Harrison. "Your mother's kindness didn't kill her. Cancer did. But you let your father kill her memory by abandoning everything she taught you." The words hit their target. Harrison's face crumpled slightly. "I used to be different. Before she died, I wanted to change the world. I started my first company to create jobs in underserved communities. I thought technology could bridge gaps, bring opportunity to people who've been overlooked." "What happened to that company?" Kesha asked quietly. "My business partner sold our client database to a competitor for $2 million. The company folded within 6 months. Harrison's laugh was bitter. "My father said it proved his point, that idealism was expensive naivety. So you became him instead of her." Dorothy observed, chose cynicism over compassion. "It was safer, was it?" Dorothy's voice was gentle but probing. "How's that safety working out for you? This beautiful apartment, all this expensive furniture, and you're eating breakfast alone every morning, talking more to computer systems than human beings." Harrison winced at the accuracy of the assessment. "Nana," Kesha said softly, "you don't have to, child. This man scattered a fortune on his bed to test your character, and you called the police because you were worried about his safety. You think I don't see what's happening here?" Both Harrison and Kesha looked at her with confusion. Dorothy sighed with the patience of someone explaining the obvious to children. "You're both wounded. You're both lonely. And you're both too stubborn to admit you might need each other." "Mrs. Washington," Harrison began, "I understand you're trying to help, but after what I did, what you did was wrong." Dorothy cut him off. "But it came from pain, not malice. And what my granddaughter did in response tells me everything I need to know about both of your characters." She turned to Kesha. "Baby girl, when was the last time anyone worried about your well-being the way you worried about us today?" Kesha opened her mouth to protest, then closed it, her brow furrowing in thought. "That's what I thought." Dorothy's voice softened. You've been taking care of everyone else for so long. You've forgotten what it feels like to be cared for. And you, she continued, pointing at Harrison, when was the last time someone went out of their way to make your space feel like home? When was the last time someone noticed you were lonely and tried to fix it without being asked? Harrison thought about the plants Kesha had repositioned, the medication she'd organized, the small kindnesses he'd never acknowledged. You've been caring for each other without realizing it, Dorothy said simply. The question is, what are you going to do about it now? The silence that followed was different from before. Less hostile, more contemplative. Outside the windows, Lake Michigan sparkled in the afternoon sun, and somewhere far below, the city continued its relentless pace while three people sat in a living room trying to figure out how broken hearts might begin to heal. I don't know how to trust again, Harrison admitted quietly. Every time I've tried, I've been hurt, and I don't know how to let someone help. Me, Kesha said, her voice barely audible. Every time I've needed help, I've had to earn it or prove I deserved. Maybe, Dorothy said gently. You can learn together. She stood slowly, her joints protesting audibly. I'm going to make some coffee in that fancy kitchen of yours, Mr. Blackthorne. These old bones need caffeine, and you two need some time to talk without me hovering. Nana, you don't have to. Child, I've been making coffee since before you were born. I think I can handle some buttons and switches. Dorothy made her way toward the kitchen, then paused. Kesha, show him the picture. What picture? Harrison asked after Dorothy disappeared around the corner. Kesha hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. After scrolling for a moment, she handed it to him silently. The photo showed a small, tidy apartment with mismatched furniture and warm lighting. Dorothy sat in a worn armchair, wearing a bright pink head wrap and laughing at something off camera. The joy in her face was infectious, even through the phone screen. This was last Sunday, Kesha said softly. She was telling me about the time she accidentally walked into the wrong hospital room and ended up helping deliver a baby. She's got a million stories like that. Times she helped people, made them laugh, made their worst days a little better. Harrison studied the photo, seeing not just Dorothy's radiant smile, but the careful way the small space had been arranged. Every object had purpose. Every surface spoke of love and attention. She looks happy, he said. She is. Even now, even with the cancer, she finds reasons to laugh every day. Kesha's voice caught slightly. She says worry is borrowed. Trouble, and she's too old to be in debt to tomorrow. But you're worrying enough for both of you. Someone has to. Kesha took her phone back, looking at the photo once more before putting it away. She raised me to believe that family takes care of family no matter what. What about friends? Harrison asked, quietly. Do friends take care of friends? Kesha looked at him sharply. We're not friends, Mr. Blackthorne. We're employer and employee. Or we were. Are we? He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, because friends are honest with each other, even when it's uncomfortable. And you've been more honest with me today than anyone has. Been in years. I was angry. You were real. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Everyone tells me what they think I want to hear, what will keep the money flowing, what will maintain the business. Relationship. Harrison's voice grew stronger. But you told me the truth about who I am and what I did. You called me out on my cowardice. I was hurt, Kesha corrected. There's a difference, is there? Because the way I see it, you cared enough to be hurt. You cared enough to be angry. You cared enough to worry about my safety, even when you thought I betrayed your trust. From the kitchen came the sound of Dorothy humming an old spiritual while she worked, the melody floating through the apartment like a blessing. I did care, Kisher admitted quietly. I do care. Even after everything, I hate that you're so lonely. I hate that your father taught you to see enemies everywhere. I hate that you've never had someone love you without wanting something in return. The admission hung between them, vulnerable and honest. "And I hate that you've been carrying the weight of your grandmother's illness alone." Harrison said, "I hate that you work 2 jobs and still worry it won't be enough. I hate that someone with your strength and compassion has to fight so hard just to survive." They looked at each other across the space between their chairs, seeing each other clearly for the first time. "So what do we do?" Kesha asked. "How do we move forward from here?" Before Harrison could answer, Dorothy returned with a tray bearing 3 cups of coffee and a plate of cookies she'd somehow produced from his barren kitchen. "Simple," she said, setting the tray on the coffee table. "You start by sharing a meal like civilized human beings. Then you figure out the rest one day at a time." She handed them each a cup, the coffee perfectly prepared despite the unfamiliar equipment. "How did you?" Harrison began. "Child, I've been making coffee for 82 years. Fancy machines. Don't scare me." Dorothy settled back onto the sofa with her own cup. "Now, let's talk about what comes next. Have you ever found unexpected friendship in the most unlikely circumstances? What does it mean to truly care for someone even when they've hurt you?" Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the healing power of genuine human connection. The afternoon had taken on an almost surreal quality. 3 unlikely people sharing coffee and conversation in a billionaire's living room. The weight of the morning's events slowly transforming into something that resembled the beginning of understanding. Harrison found himself laughing, actually laughing as Dorothy told stories about her nursing career, while Kesha gradually relaxed, her defensive walls lowering as she watched her grandmother work her particular magic on a lonely man who clearly needed it. Then Harrison's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his expression immediately darkened. "I'm sorry. I need to take this. It's my lawyer." "Harrison." The voice was crisp, professional, and loud enough that both women could hear it clearly. "We have a serious problem. I just got off the phone with someone from the Tribune. They're running a story about police being called to your residence this morning. Something about you testing your domestic staff with planted money." The blood drained from Harrison's face. "How did they police scanners, Harrison?" "The Tribune monitors them religiously. They're calling the story about wealthy privilege and racial profiling. The headline is going to be, 'Tech Billionaires Twisted Test. How the Rich Humiliate Their Help.'" Kesha's coffee cup rattled against its saucer as she set it down with shaking hands. Dorothy's face had gone stone cold. "Can we stop it?" Harrison asked desperately. "Not unless you can prove it didn't happen, which you can't because it did." The lawyer's voice was harsh. "Harrison, this is a public relations nightmare. The board is already getting calls. Social media is starting to pick it up. #Billionaire test is trending on Twitter." "Oh, God," Harrison whispered. "It gets worse. They have a photo." "What photo?" "Someone in your building took a picture of police cars outside. They're using it with the story. But that's not the bad part. The bad part is they know the employee's name." Harrison's eyes flew to Kesha, who had gone completely pale. "How?" "Police report is public record. Kesha Washington, age 34, of Bronzeville. They've got her full name, her address, probably her employment history by now." Kesha stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "No, no, 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 Kesha." Harrison started. "Do you understand what this means?" Her voice was rising with panic. "My name is going to be in the newspaper connected to this story. Every potential employer, every client, everyone is going to see Kesha Washington and think that's the maid who almost got accused of stealing from a billionaire. But you didn't do anything wrong. You think that matters?" Kesha was pacing now, her hands pressed to her head. "You think people are going to read past the headline? You think anyone's going to hire a domestic worker who was involved in a police incident at a wealthy client's home?" The full implications hit Harrison like a freight train. "I'll fix this. I'll call the Tribune. Explain what really happened." And say what? Kesha's voice cracked. That you deliberately tested me because you thought I might be a thief. That makes it better. Dorothy stood slowly, her face a mask of controlled fury that was somehow more terrifying than shouting would have been. Mr. Blackthorne, I think you should know that my granddaughter has been building her reputation in this city for 12 years. 12 years of impeccable references, of going above and beyond, of building trust with clients who recommend her to their friends. Mrs. Washington, I'm not finished. Dorothy's voice could have cut glass. She has been saving every penny for my medical treatments while building toward a career as an accountant. She takes night classes, maintains a perfect GPA, and works with small business owners who trust her with their financial records. The weight of what he destroyed was becoming clear. I didn't think. No, you didn't think. Kesha had stopped pacing and was staring out at Lake Michigan, her shoulders rigid. You didn't think about how this would affect my life, my career, my future. You were so busy protecting yourself from imaginary betrayal that you destroyed a real person's reputation. Harrison's phone rang again. Same. Lawyer. Don't answer it, Kesha said quietly. I have to. Don't you dare. Answer that phone. She turned to face him, and the pain in her eyes was devastating. I can't listen to any more details about how my life is being destroyed, so you can manage your public relations crisis. But Harrison was already answering. Yes, it's getting worse. Social media has picked up the story. Hashtag Black Maid Test is trending now. There are calls for boycotts of your companies. The charity gala tonight. The organizers are asking if you're still planning to attend. Kesha made a sound like she'd been struck. A charity gala? You're worried about a charity gala? Kesha, please. What charity? Her voice was dangerously quiet. Harrison's lawyer was still talking in his ear, but Harrison was watching Kesha's face and realizing he was about to make everything infinitely worse. It's the Chicago Cancer Research Foundation annual fundraiser. The silence that followed was deafening. Cancer research, Kesha repeated slowly. You're going to a cancer research fundraiser tonight. While my grandmother is dying of cancer because we can't afford experimental treatments. I can explain. The irony is just, Kesha started, laughing, but it was the kind of laughter that comes right before a complete breakdown. You'll spend thousands of dollars tonight on a fancy dinner to fund research that might help people like my Nana in 20 years. But you couldn't see past your own prejudice to help the person right in front of you. Harrison, the lawyer's voice was tiny through the phone speaker. Are you there? I have to go, Harrison said into phone and hung up. But when he looked up, Kesha was already grabbing her purse. Where are you going? Home, to start figuring out how to rebuild my life after you destroyed it. She kissed her grandmother's cheek. Come on, Nana. We're leaving, baby girl. Dorothy said gently. Maybe we should. Then you figure out the rest one day at a time. She handed them each a cup. The coffee, perfectly prepared despite the unfamiliar equipment. How did you? Harrison began. Child, I've been making coffee for 82 years. Fancy machines don't scare me. Dorothy settled back onto the sofa with her own cup. Now, let's talk about what comes next. Have you ever found unexpected friendship in the most unlikely circumstances? What does it mean to truly care for someone, even when they've hurt you? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the healing power of genuine human connection. The afternoon had taken on an almost surreal quality. 3 unlikely people sharing coffee and conversation in a billionaire's living room. The weight of the morning's events slowly transforming into something that resembled the beginning of understanding. Harrison found himself laughing, actually laughing as Dorothy told stories about her nursing career, while Kesha gradually relaxed, her defensive walls lowering as she watched her grandmother work her particular magic on a lonely man who clearly needed it. Then Harrison's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his expression immediately darkened. I'm sorry. I need to take this. It's my lawyer, Harrison. The voice was crisp, professional, and loud enough that both women could hear it clearly. "We have a serious problem. I just got off the phone with someone from the Tribune. They're running a story about police being called to your residence this morning. Something about you testing your domestic staff with planted money." The blood drained from Harrison's face. "How did they?" "Police scanners, Harrison. The Tribune monitors them religiously. They're calling it a story about wealthy privilege and racial profiling. The headline is going to be, 'Tech Billionaires Twisted Test. How the Rich Humiliate Their Help.'" Kesha's coffee cup rattled against its saucer as she set it down with shaking hands. Dorothy's face had gone stone cold. "Can we stop it?" Harrison asked desperately. "Not unless you can prove it didn't happen, which you can't because it did." The lawyer's voice was harsh. "Harrison, this is a public relations nightmare. The board is already getting calls. Social media is starting to pick it up. Hashtag Billionaire Test is trending on Twitter." "Oh, God," Harrison whispered. "It gets worse. They have a photo." "What photo?" "Someone in your building took a picture of police cars outside. They're using it with the story. But that's not the bad part. The bad part is they know the employee's name." Harrison's eyes flew to Kesha, who had gone completely pale. "How?" "Police report is public record. Kesha Washington, age 34, of Bronzeville. They've got her full name, her address, probably her employment history by now." Kesha stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "No, no, 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 Kesha." Harrison started. "Do you understand what this means?" Her voice was rising with panic. "My name is going to be in the newspaper connected to this story. Every potential employer, every client, everyone is going to see Kesha Washington and think that's the maid who almost got accused of stealing from a billionaire. But you didn't do anything wrong. You think that matters?" Kesha was pacing now, her hands pressed to her head. "You think people are going to read past the headline? You think anyone's going to hire a domestic worker who was involved in a police incident at a wealthy client's home?" The full implications hit Harrison like a freight train. "I'll fix this. I'll call the Tribune. Explain what really happened and say what?" Kesha's voice cracked. "That you deliberately tested me because you thought I might be a thief. That makes it better." Dorothy stood slowly, her face a mass of controlled fury that was somehow more terrifying than shouting would have been. "Mr. Blackthorne, I think you should know that my granddaughter has been building her reputation in this city for 12 years. 12 years of impeccable references, of going above and beyond, of building trust with clients who recommend her to their friends. Mrs. Washington, I'm not finished." Dorothy's voice could have cut glass. "She has been saving every penny from my medical treatments while building toward a career as an accountant. She takes night classes, maintains a perfect GPA, and works with small business owners who trust her with their financial records." The weight of what he destroyed was becoming clear. "I didn't think." "No, you didn't think." Kesha had stopped pacing and was staring out at Lake Michigan, her shoulders rigid. "You didn't think about how this would affect my life, my career, my future. You were so busy protecting yourself from imaginary betrayal that you destroyed a real person's reputation." Harrison's phone rang again. "Same. Lawyer." "Don't answer it," Kesha said quietly. "I have to." "Don't you dare answer that phone." She turned to face him, and the pain in her eyes was devastating. "I can't listen to any more details about how my life is being destroyed so you can manage your public relations crisis." But Harrison was already answering. "Yes, it's getting worse. Social media has picked up the story. Hashtag Black Maid Test is trending now. There are calls for boycotts of your companies, the charity gala tonight. The organizers are asking if you're still planning to attend." Kesha made a sound like she'd been struck. "A charity gala? You're worried about a charity gala?" "Kesha, please. What charity?" Her voice was dangerously quiet. Harrison's lawyer was still talking in his ear, but Harrison was watching Kesha's face and realizing he was about to make everything infinitely worse. It's the Chicago Cancer Research Foundation annual fundraiser. The silence that followed was deafening. Cancer research. Kesha repeated slowly. You're going to a cancer research fundraiser tonight. Wow. My grandmother is dying of cancer because we can't afford experimental treatments. I can explain. The irony is just, Kesha started, laughing. But it was the kind of laughter that comes right before a complete breakdown. You'll spend thousands of dollars tonight on a fancy dinner to fund research that might help people like my Nana in 20 years. But you couldn't see past your own prejudice to help the person right in front of you. Harrison, the lawyer's voice was tiny through the phone speaker. Are you there? I have to go. Harrison said into the phone and hung up. But when he looked up, Kesha was already grabbing her purse. Where you going? Home. To start figuring out how to rebuild my life after you've destroyed it. She kissed her grandmother's cheek. Come on, Nana. We're leaving. Baby girl, Dorothy said gently. Maybe we should. I looked her up. Kesha Washington has a 4.0 GPA in accounting at City College. She's been on the dean's list for 3 years. She volunteers at a literacy program on weekends. This man destroyed the reputation of someone who's been nothing but excellent her entire life. Harrison's hands were shaking as he read it. 4.0 GPA, dean's list, volunteer work, on top of 2 jobs and caring for a dying grandmother. While he'd been testing her character, she'd been demonstrating it every single day. His phone rang again. This time it was his assistant, Mr. Blackthorne. I have Margaret from the Cancer Foundation on. Hold. She wants to know if you're planning to make your usual donation tonight. The pledge amount is $50,000 for the research fund. $50,000, more than twice what Kesha needed for her grandmother's treatments. Sir, are you there? Harrison closed his eyes and suddenly he could hear his mother's voice from 30 years ago. The measure of a man isn't how much he can accumulate, Harry. It's how much he's willing to give when it matters most. For the first time in decades, he knew exactly what she would want him to do. Cancel the donation, he said quietly. Sir, cancel the donation to the Cancer Foundation and get me the contact information for every major news outlet that's covering this story. I want to schedule interviews for tomorrow morning. Mr. Blackthorne, your publicist strongly advises against giving interviews right now. Fire the publicist and call my lawyer. I need him to draft something for me tonight. Harrison ended the call and walked back toward the gala, but instead of rejoining the party, he headed for the exit. He had work to do, and for the first time in years, it wasn't work designed to protect himself. It was work designed to protect someone else. Kesha hadn't slept. She'd spent the night watching her phone buzz with notifications as her name spread across the internet. Each share and comment another nail in the coffin of her reputation. Her grandmother had finally fallen asleep around 3 a.m., exhausted from trying to come for her. But Kesha had remained wide awake, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out how to rebuild a life that had been destroyed. In a single afternoon, the worst part wasn't the strangers commenting on her situation. It was the silence from people she knew. No calls from her bookkeeping clients. No texts from other women in the cleaning service. Even her night school classmates hadn't reached out. In the court of public opinion, she'd already been tried and found guilty of something. Being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Being black and poor and naive enough to think a wealthy man might actually see her as human. Her phone rang, jarring her from her thoughts. Unknown number. Hello, Ms. Washington. This is Jennifer Martinez from Channel 7 News. I was wondering if you'd be willing to give an interview about what happened yesterday at Harrison Blackthorne's residence. Kesha's stomach lurched. I know, I don't want to. We're prepared to offer compensation for your time. This story is generating significant interest, and we'd like to hear your side. My side. Kesha's voice cracked. There are no sides. A man thought I was a thief. He tested me, and now my name is ruined. What more is there to say? Well, Mr. Blackthorne is giving interviews today. Starting at 8 a.m. with Good Morning America, then CNN, then local affiliates. We thought you might want to respond. The phone slipped from Kesha's hand, clattering to the floor. Harrison was going on television, national television, to talk about her, about what happened, to spin the story in whatever way would save his reputation. She scrambled to pick up the phone. Ms. Washington, are you there? What is he saying? I don't know yet. The interviews haven't aired, but his people put out a statement an hour ago saying he takes full responsibility for his actions and wants to make things right. Make things right, Kesha repeated hollowly. How do you make something like this right? She hung up before the reporter could answer, but the phone immediately rang again. Another unknown number, then another. By 6:30 a.m., she'd received calls from 5 different news outlets, all wanting her comment on Harrison Blackthorne's media blitz. Dorothy shuffled out of the bedroom in her robe and slippers, looking older than her 82 years. Baby girl, you need to eat something. I can't, Nana. My stomach. Kesha gestured helplessly at her phone, which was buzzing again. Where are all these calls? Reporters. Harrison is giving interviews today about me, about what happened. Dorothy's face hardened. Turn off that phone. But what if? Turn it off right now. Dorothy's voice carried the authority of someone who'd survived 8 decades of crisis. Whatever he's going to say, you hearing about it from reporters isn't going to help anyone. Kesha powered down her phone with shaking hands, and the apartment fell into blessed silence. Now, Dorothy said gently, you're going to shower, eat breakfast, and then we're going to figure out what comes next. What if there is no next? Kesha's voice was small, defeated. What if this destroys everything I've worked for? Dorothy sat beside her granddaughter on the small sofa, taking her hands in her weathered ones. Baby girl, do you remember when you were 16 and that teacher accused you of cheating on your SATs because your score was too high for a girl from your background? Kesha nodded. What did we do? We proved him wrong. I took the test. Again, scored even higher. And when that employer said you were too young and inexperienced for the bookkeeping job, I showed him my portfolio, demonstrated my skills, worked twice as hard as anyone else. Every time someone has underestimated you, dismissed you, or tried to tear you down, what have you done? Kesha met her grandmother's eyes. I proved them wrong. That's right. You proved them wrong by being excellent, by being undeniable, by showing up every single day and doing the work, even when people made it harder than it needed to be. Dorothy's voice grew stronger. This man's test didn't change who you are, Kesha. It revealed who you are. And what it revealed is someone so good, so principled that even when faced with more money than she'd ever seen, her first thought was to protect someone else. But my reputation will be rebuilt the same way you built it the first time. One day, one client, one perfect job at a time. Dorothy, squeeze her hands. The people who matter will see through this noise to the truth, and the people who don't see, it weren't worth your time anyway. Kesha felt tears start again, but these were different. Not the tears of defeat she'd been crying all night, but tears of recognition. Her grandmother was right. She'd overcome prejudice and doubt before. She could do it again. Now, Dorothy said, standing slowly, go shower. Whatever that man is about to say on television, you're going to face it clean, fed, and with your head held high. As Kesha headed toward the bathroom, Dorothy called after her, and, baby girl, turn your phone back on at noon. Whatever happens this morning, you'll want to hear it from the source, not from strangers. Harrison sat across from Robin Roberts in the GMA studio, his palms sweating despite the cold air conditioning. He'd flown to New York at 5 a.m., his lawyer and newly hired crisis communication specialist trailing behind him with briefing documents he'd refused to read. I don't want talking points, he told them on the plane. I want to tell the truth. The truth is legally dangerous. His lawyer had warned. It opens you up to discrimination lawsuits, Civil rights violations. Good, Harrison had replied. Maybe I deserve to be sued. Now, sitting under the studio lights with Robin Roberts' kind but probing gaze focused on him, Harrison felt the weight of what he was about to do. This wasn't damage control. This was confession. Mr. Blackthorne, Robin began, you've asked to come on national television to address what happened with your employee, Kesha. Washington, tell us in your own words what you did and why. Harrison looked directly into the camera, knowing that somewhere Kesha might be watching. I committed a profound act of cruelty. Disguised as caution, he said simply. I scattered over $400,000 in cash and jewelry across my bedroom to test whether Kesha Washington would steal from me. It was wrong. It was racist, and it was cowardly. Robin's eyebrows rose slightly. This wasn't the defensive explanation most public figures gave when caught in scandals. You're calling your own actions racist? Yes, because that's what they were. Harrison's voice grew stronger. I had no reason to suspect Ms. Washington of dishonesty. In 2 months of employment, she had been nothing but professional, respectful, and trustworthy. But I looked at a black woman who cleaned houses and saw a potential thief instead of the remarkable person she actually is. Tell us about Ms. Washington. What kind of employee was she? Harrison's expression softened. She was extraordinary. She went far beyond her job requirements, organizing my medication when she noticed it was mixed up, repositioning plants that were dying, creating small kindnesses throughout my home. She treated my space with more care than I did, and yet you still felt the need to test her. Because I'm broken, Harrison said simply. I've been betrayed by people I trusted, and instead of healing from that pain, I let it poison me. I turned into the kind of person who sees enemies everywhere, who tests instead of trusts, who hurts innocent people rather than risk being hurt again. Robin leaned forward. What was Ms. Washington's reaction when she discovered the money? She called the police immediately because she was worried about my safety. She thought I might be hurt or in danger. Harrison's voice cracked slightly. While I was watching her through hidden cameras, expecting her to steal from me, she was trying to protect me. How do you make something like this right? Harrison pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket. This is a legal document I had drawn up last night. It establishes the Kesha Washington Scholarship Fund with an initial endowment of $5 million. Robin's eyes widened. $5 million. The fund will provide full scholarships for working students pursuing degrees in accounting and business, with preference given to single parents and primary caregivers. It will also provide emergency financial assistance for students facing medical crises in their families. This is certainly generous, but some might say you're trying to buy forgiveness. I'm not. Harrison's voice was firm. This isn't about forgiveness. This is about acknowledging that Kesha Washington represents everything I should aspire to be. Someone who works tirelessly for her goals, who maintains her integrity under impossible pressure, who thinks of others before herself even when she's been wronged. He looked directly into the camera again. Ms. Washington, if you're watching this, I want you to know that the Scholarship Fund isn't charity. It's recognition. Recognition of the excellence you've demonstrated every day. Recognition of the strength you've shown in the face of my cruelty. And recognition that the world needs more people like you and fewer people like who I've become. Robin was quiet. For a moment, what's next for you, Mr. Blackthorne? I'm stepping down from active leadership of my companies. I'm liquidating a significant portion of my assets to fund organizations that fight workplace discrimination and support working families. And I'm entering therapy to address the trauma and prejudice that led me to hurt an innocent person. And Ms. Washington, have you spoken to her? No, and I don't expect to. I've caused her enough pain. The best thing I can do for her now is get out of her way and let her rebuilding begin. Harrison's voice was heavy with regret, but I hope someday she'll know that meeting her, even under these circumstances, reminded me of who I used to be and who I might still become. The interview continued for another 10 minutes. But the damage was done to Harrison's reputation, his business relationships, his standing in Chicago society. He'd just committed professional suicide on national television, and for the first time in years, he felt like he could breathe. Kesha sat in her grandmother's worn armchair. The small television turned to a news channel that was replaying clips from Harrison's morning interviews. She watched the Good Morning America segment twice, the CNN interview once, and a local Chicago news piece that had aired 20 minutes ago. Each time, she found herself more confused and angry. This wasn't the defensive, reputation-saving performance she'd expected. This was something else, entirely. A public dismantling of his own character. A confession that laid bare every ugly truth about what he'd done and why. $5 million. Dorothy said from the kitchen where she was making lunch despite Kesha's protest that she wasn't hungry for a scholarship fund in your name. It's not about the money. Nana, I know it's not baby girl, but it's not nothing either. Kesha's phone, which she turned back on at noon as her grandmother suggested, had been ringing constantly. More reporters, but also other calls. Her supervisor at Celestial Cleaning Services, her professors from night school, even a few of her bookkeeping clients who'd seen interviews and wanted to express their support. The narrative was shifting. Where yesterday's headlines had painted her as a victim of wealthy prejudice, today's stories were focusing on Harrison's unprecedented public accountability and the woman whose character had inspired such dramatic self-reflection. Billionaire's $5 million mea culpa. She reminded me who I could be, the cleaning lady who changed a cynical heart. From test to testament, how one woman's integrity inspired a fortune's redemption. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. Dorothy shuffled toward the door, but Kesha was already up. I'll get it, Nana. She opened the door to find a young black woman in a professional blazer, carrying a leather briefcase and tablet. Ms. Washington, I'm Angela Foster from Morrison Pike and Associates. We're the law firm handling the establishment of the Kesha Washington Scholarship Fund. Kesha's heart sank. Of course, there would be lawyers, contracts, publicity requirements. Nothing was ever simple. When billionaires were involved, I didn't ask for this, she said quietly. I know. That's actually why I'm here. Angela's smile was genuine. Mr. Blackthorne was very specific about the terms. You have no obligations to the fund, no public appearances, no interviews, no involvement of any kind, unless you specifically choose it. Your name was used only with deep respect for what you represent, not to bind you to anything. Then why are you here? Because there's something else, something separate from the scholarship fund. Angela opened her briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope. Mr. Blackthorne asked me to deliver this personally with no strings attached and no expectation of response. Kesha stared at the envelope like it might bite her. He also wanted me to tell you, Angela continued gently, that he's leaving Chicago. He sold his apartment and is moving to Seattle to work with a nonprofit that helps formerly incarcerated individuals find employment. He wanted you to know you won't have to worry about running into him around the city. He's leaving Chicago. The words came out smaller than Kesha intended. He says it's part of becoming the person he should have been all along. Angela handed her the envelope. There's no rush to read this. Take your time and remember, no response is required or expected. After Angela left, Kesha sat holding the envelope, while Dorothy pretended not to watch from the kitchen. You gonna open it? Dorothy finally asked. I don't know if I want to. Sometimes the things we don't want to do are exactly what we need to do. Kesha carefully opened the envelope and found not a letter, but a photograph. The picture she'd shown him of Dorothy laughing in her pink head wrap. Underneath, it was a single page, handwritten in careful script. Kesha, I've looked at this photo 100 times since yesterday. Your grandmother's joy is radiant, but what strikes me most is what you can't see in the picture, that you took this photo, that you capture these moments of happiness, preserve them, treasure them. That's who you are. someone who sees light in the world and holds on to it. I spent 2 months watching you work, and I never once saw you the way you saw me, as a human being deserving of care. You watered my dying plants, organized my medication, arranged my space with kindness I didn't deserve and hadn't earned. You gave freely of yourself to someone who was nothing but a stranger who paid your company. When I scattered that money across my bed, I thought I was testing your character. I realized now I was revealing mine. You called the police because you were worried about my safety. After everything I'd done, your first instinct was still to protect me. That's not just integrity. That's grace. I can't undo the damage I've caused to your reputation, your career, your peace of mind. I can't take back the humiliation or the stress or the sleepless nights. Money can't fix betrayal, and public apologies can't restore trust. But I can make sure that your grandmother gets the medical care she needs. I know you'll want to refuse help from me. Your pride is one of the things I admire most about you. The way you built everything in your life through your own effort and excellence. But this isn't charity and it's not guilt. This is debt. I owe you for 2 months of kindness I never acknowledged. I owe you for care I never thanked you for. I owe you for the lesson you taught me about what real character looks like. I owe you for showing me that my mother's heart still beats somewhere inside my father's son. The medical bills for your grandmother's treatment have been paid in full, all of them, for as long as needed. The doctors at Northwestern Memorial have been contacted. They're expecting you to call to schedule the first round of experimental treatments. You don't owe me gratitude. You don't owe me forgiveness. You don't owe me anything, but I owe you everything. I owe you the person I'm going to try to become with profound respect and deepest regret. Harrison, P.S. The plants in my apartment are yours if you want them. They'll thrive better in a home where someone actually cares. Kesha read the letter 3 times before the words fully sank in. Then she looked at the photograph of her grandmother's laughing face and started crying. Not the defeated tears of the past 24 hours, but tears of relief so profound they shook her entire body. Baby girl, Dorothy, appeared beside the chair, her hand gentle on Kesha's shoulder. Nana, Kesha, managed through her tears. He paid for your treatments. All of them. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment, taking the letter from Kesha's trembling hands and reading it carefully. This man, she said, finally, is not the same man who scattered money on his bed yesterday. No, Kesha agreed, wiping her eyes. He's not. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Kesha looked up at her. Grandmother, what do you mean? I mean that man just gave you the gift of your grandmother's life, asked for nothing in return, and is leaving town so you never have to see him again. That's either the most generous act of contrition I've ever seen, or what? Dorothy's smile was knowing of a man falling in love and not knowing how to say it. Nana, Kesha's cheeks flushed. It's not. He doesn't. We're not, baby girl. I've been watching people fall in love for 82 years. I know what it looks like when someone realizes they found a person who makes them want to be better. Even if that were true, which it's not, it doesn't matter. Too much has happened. There's too much hurt, is there? Dorothy settled into her chair with a thoughtful expression. Let me ask you something. Yesterday, when you realized what he'd done, what hurt more? That he tested you, or that he'd never really seen you? Kesha considered the question that he'd never seen me, that after 2 months of caring for his space, trying to make him feel less alone, he still looked at me and saw a potential thief. And now, Kesha looked at the letter again, at the careful handwriting that spoke of time and thought and genuine reflection. Now, he sees me so clearly. It's almost scary. And how does that feel? Before Kesha could answer, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and frowned. It's Northwestern Memorial, the Cancer Center. Answer it, Dorothy said gently. Hello, Ms. Washington. This is Dr. Patricia Kim from the Oncology Department at Northwestern Memorial. We have your grandmother, Dorothy Washington, scheduled for consultation regarding experimental pancreatic cancer treatments. Yes, but we've had a cancellation in our schedule. Could you bring her in this afternoon? The sooner we begin treatment, the better her prognosis. Kesha met her grandmother's eyes. Seeing hope and fear warring in the weathered face she loved more than life itself. Yes, she said firmly. Well, be there. 3 hours later, Kesha sat in a hospital waiting room while her grandmother underwent preliminary testing for the experimental treatment protocol. The oncologist had been cautiously optimistic. The treatment was showing promising results in early trials, and Dorothy's overall health was good despite the cancer. She has a real chance. Dr. Kim had said, a year ago, I would have had nothing to offer her. Today, I can offer hope. Hope. Such a simple word, but it felt revolutionary. After months of doctors who'd offered only palliative care and comfort measures, Kesha's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ms. Washington, this is Angela Foster. I'm at O'Hare Airport with Mr. Blackthorne. His flight to Seattle boards in an hour. I know you didn't ask, but I thought you should know. He keeps checking his phone, hoping you might reach out. If you want to say anything at all, now would be the time. Gate B7, United Airlines. Kesha stared at the message for a long time. An hour ago, she would have deleted it without responding. But sitting in this hospital, knowing her grandmother was undergoing tests that could save her life because of Harrison's intervention, she found herself thinking about second chances, about grace, about the difference between forgiveness and trust, and whether it was possible to rebuild the latter without abandoning the former. Before she could lose her nerve, she typed back, "What's his phone number?" The response came immediately, and Kesha found herself dialing before she could think too hard about what she wanted to say. Hello. Harrison's voice was cautious, uncertain. It's Kesha. Silence then. How is she? Your grandmother? Did the doctors? She's getting tested right now. They think the treatment could help. Kesha's voice was steady, controlled. They think she might have a real chance. Thank God. The relief in his voice was palpable. Kesha, I don't. She cut him off gently. Don't. Apologize again. Don't explain. Just listen. Okay. Kesha took a deep breath. 2 days ago, I thought I knew exactly who you were. A lonely, wealthy man who saw me as nothing more than a help. Yesterday, I thought you were a cruel person who enjoyed testing people for sport. I was both of those things. Maybe. But today, I read a letter from someone I don't recognize. Someone who sees me clearly enough to know that pride would make me want to refuse help, but love for my grandmother would make me accept it. Someone who understands that the plants mattered because they showed I cared, not because they were part of my job. Harrison was quiet, but she could hear his breathing. The person who wrote that letter, Kesha continued, is someone I might want to know, might want to trust eventually, might even want to be friends with given time and patience, and a lot of very honest conversations. Kesha, his voice was rough with emotion, but the person who scattered money on his bed to test me, that person hurt me in ways that are going to take time to heal. That person made assumptions about my character based on my race and my job. And no amount of money or scholarships or public apologies can undo that pain. I know, and the question is, she interrupted, which person are you going to be tomorrow and the day after that? And the day after that? The question hung between them, carrying the weight of possibility and the fear of disappointment. I don't know, Harrison said honestly. I know who I want to be. I know who you made me want to become. But I've been the other person for so long. Then maybe, Kesha said quietly, you shouldn't go to Seattle alone. What do you mean? I mean, maybe the person you want to become needs witnesses. People who knew who you were before, who can call you out when you start slipping back into old patterns. People who have reason to hold you accountable. Are you saying? I'm saying my grandmother is going to need 6 months of treatment. After that, she should be stable enough to travel. And I'm saying Seattle has accounting firms. And I hear there are good schools there for finishing degrees. The silence stretched so long that Kesha thought the call might have dropped. Harrison, you would do that after everything I've done. Not for you, Kesha said firmly. For me, because running away from what happened doesn't heal it, because I want to see if the person who wrote that letter is real or if he was just a beautiful fiction you created to make yourself feel better, and if he's real. Kesha smiled, thinking of her grandmother's words about second chances and the power of witnessing someone's transformation. Then maybe we'll become the kind of friends who tell each other hard truths and help each other be better. Maybe we'll build something based on mutual respect instead of tests and assumptions. And if he's not real, if I disappoint you again, then I'll have learned something important about forgiveness, and you'll have learned something important about consequences. Either way, we'll both be wiser. Harrison was quiet for another long moment. There's something else, he said finally. Something I didn't put in the letter because I wasn't sure it was my place to say. What? When I watched you call the police, when I saw you worried about my safety, even after discovering what I'd done, I realized I was falling in love with someone whose character was everything mine wasn't. Someone who responded to cruelty with compassion, to suspicion with care, to betrayal with grace. Kesha's breath caught. Harrison, I'm not asking you to love me back, he said quickly. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know that what I felt wasn't pity or guilt or some savior complex. It was recognition. Like my heart finally remembered what was supposed to be looking for. The words hung between them, honest and vulnerable and terrifying in their simplicity. That's a lot to process, Kesha said quietly. I know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. No, you should have. Because if we're going to try to be friends, Ray, all friends, we need to be honest about what we're feeling. All of it, even the complicated parts. So what happens now? Kesha looked through the waiting room. Window at the Chicago skyline. The city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. Now you get on your plane to Seattle. You start your new job, find an apartment, begin therapy, become the person you want to be. And in 6 months, when Nana's treatments are finished, maybe we'll join you. Maybe we'll see if the friendship we're both hoping for is possible. 6 months. Harrison repeated. 6 months. No calls, no texts, no checking up on us. Use the time to prove to yourself that you can change without an audience, without external motivation. If you can become a better man for yourself, then maybe you can be a better friend to me. And after 6 months, we'll see. Maybe we'll discover that some bridges can be rebuilt stronger than they were before. Maybe we'll find out that love, friendship love, family love, maybe even romantic love, isn't about testing each other's character. What's it about? Kesha smiled, thinking of her grandmother's radiant laughter, of the plants Harrison had noticed her caring for, of the unexpected ways people could surprise each other when given a chance. It's about seeing each other clearly and choosing to stay anyway. It's about building something together that's stronger than what either of us could create alone. The boarding announcement echoed in the background of Harrison's call. That's my flight, he said. Then go. And Harrison, yes, thank you for seeing me, for saving her, for becoming someone worthy of a second chance. Thank you for giving me one. After she hung up, Kesha sat in the hospital waiting room and thought about the strange winding path that had brought her to this moment. 48 hours ago, she'd been a cleaning lady worried about paying for her grandmother's medical care. Now, she was a woman whose name was associated with integrity, whose story had inspired a scholarship fund, whose grandmother had real hope for recovery. And maybe, just maybe, she was someone on the verge of friendship that could teach them both what it meant to love without limits or conditions. Dorothy emerged from the testing area with Dr. Kim, both women smiling. The preliminary results look very promising, Dr. Kim said. We can start the first treatment cycle on Monday. As Kesha hugged her grandmother, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender and strength, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Genuine hope for the future. "How did it go, baby girl?" Dorothy asked quietly. "Did you call him?" "I did." And Kesha smiled, looking out at the city lights of Chicago, the place that had tested her character in ways she'd never imagined, but had ultimately revealed strengths she didn't know she possessed. And we're going to see what happens when two broken people decide to heal together instead of apart. Dorothy squeezed her hand. Now that sounds like a love story worth waiting for. The morning rain had stopped by the time Kesha and Dorothy stepped off the plane. At Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, 6 months of experimental treatment had worked better than anyone had dared hope. Dorothy's cancer was in remission, her energy was returning, and her doctors had cleared her for travel and a new adventure. Kesha had finished her accounting degree with a perfect 4.0 GPA, her final semester funded by the scholarship that bore her name. The irony wasn't lost on her that Harrison's betrayal had ultimately opened doors she'd never imagined possible. They'd kept their word about no contact during the 6 months. Kesha had learned about Harrison's progress through news articles and social media posts from the nonprofit where he worked. A man slowly, methodically earning trust through consistent actions rather than grand gestures. Now standing in a baggage claim area with her suitcases and their entire life packed into boxes being shipped separately, Kesha felt nervous for the first time since making this decision. "There he is," Dorothy said. Quietly, Harrison stood by the information desk, wearing jeans and a simple blue sweater instead of the expensive clothes she remembered. His hair was a little longer, his face more relaxed, and when he saw them, his smile was tentative but genuine. He didn't approach immediately, letting them come to him, respecting the space they needed to maintain their own power in this reunion. "Mrs. Washington," he said when they reached him, extending his hand. Formally to Dorothy, "You look wonderful. I feel wonderful, thanks to you." Dorothy shook his hand firmly, then surprised him by pulling him into a brief hug. "But that's not why we're here. No, we're here because my granddaughter believes in second chances, and I believe in her judgment." Dorothy's voice carried quiet authority. "Don't make us regret it." "I won't," Harrison said simply. "I promise I won't." He turned to Kesha, and she saw in his eyes the same careful respect he'd shown in his letter, seeing her fully, acknowledging everything that had brought them to this moment. "Hi," she said. "Hi." They stood looking at each other for a long moment. Two people who had started as strangers, become enemies, and were now attempting something much more difficult, becoming friends. So Kesha said, "Finally, I hear you've been working with formerly incarcerated individuals. How's that going?" As Harrison told them about his work, about the men and women he'd helped find jobs and housing, about the trust he was slowly earning in a community that had every reason to be suspicious of wealthy white men with savior complexes, Kesha found herself relaxing. This wasn't the broken, cynical man who had tested her 6 months ago. This wasn't even the guilty billionaire who had tried to buy forgiveness with grand gestures. This was someone new, someone who had taken the hardest path, changing himself from the inside out, earning respect through service, proving his character through consistency rather than proclamations. "Where are we staying?" Dorothy asked as they walked toward the parking garage. "I found you an apartment in Capitol Hill," Harrison said. 2 bedrooms, fully furnished, close to the bus lines and grocery stores. "The lease is in your names. I'm just a guarantor." "And work?" Kesha asked. "There are 3 accounting firms interested in interviewing you. I gave them your resume and transcripts, but they don't know about our connection. You'll earn any job you get, on your own merit. Everything carefully arranged to give them independence to avoid any sense of obligation or debt." As they drove through the city, Harrison pointed out landmarks and neighborhoods, acting more like a tour guide than someone who had appended their lives. But Kesha could feel the careful hope radiating from him, the fear that they might decide this had been a mistake. "Harrison," she said as they pulled up to their new apartment building. "Yes. Are you free for dinner tomorrow night?" Nothing fancy, just friends getting to know each other. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise after a long, dark night. I like that very much. And as Kesha helped her grandmother out of the car and looked up at the Seattle sky, she thought about the strange, beautiful journey that had brought them here. A journey that had started with the worst of human nature, suspicion, prejudice, betrayal, and had somehow transformed into something that looked remarkably like love. Not romantic love, not yet, maybe not ever, but something deeper and more enduring. The love that comes from truly seeing another person, from choosing to believe in their capacity for growth, from building something together based on mutual respect and honest communication. It was the kind of love that didn't require tests because it was built on trust. It was the kind of love that her mother would have recognized that her grandmother had modeled her entire life. It was the kind of love that could heal old wounds and create new possibilities. And it was just beginning. What does it mean to give someone a second chance? How do we rebuild trust after it's been broken? Share your thoughts about redemption and friendship in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in the power of human transformation. Sometimes, the most beautiful relationships grow from the most unexpected soil. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting as you can ever imagine. So do check it out.